Hi and welcome back to the course. In this video we're going to be starting to do object-oriented programming. Now this is quite a scary topic when you're starting, but it's really not that difficult. The only thing you have to remember is object-oriented programming has a really good name. Object-oriented programming really encourages you to think of things as things. So for example, if you look at something that you've got in front of you, such as a laptop or a desktop computer, they have a number of properties, such as their color, or their CPU power, or indeed the keyboard layout, or any number of other things. And they also have a number of things they can do, a number of actions they can achieve or perform, such as turning on or turning off or saving a document, for example. And indeed the same would happen with every other object that is around you. All objects have a certain number of properties and a certain number of actions. And you can simplify those or complicate those as much as you want. For example, this laptop or desktop that you've got in front of you, does it have really a CPU speed property? Or is that a property of another object that is inside your laptop? The processor. So thinking about these things and realizing that objects really are compositions of other objects, and indeed all objects have these properties and these methods they can do, these actions. If you start thinking of things around you in that way, that will simplify the way that you interact with programming as a whole. So realize that everything can be decomposed into a number of properties and a number of actions or methods. And when you do that, you'll realize that everything you want to make in programming can be an object. For example, if you want to interact with a printer, you would have a printer object. If you want to interact specifically with a Canon printer that has a specific property that no other printer has, then that Canon printer can also be another object. If you have students in your database, you may want to make student objects because all of the students have certain properties that one student to the next may have differing values for those properties. For example, one student may have blonde hair and the other one may have brown hair, but they both have hair, or they may have no hair indeed, but no hair is also a property that hair would encompass. As you may have long hair or short hair or no hair or a shaved head. So all of these properties and indeed all the actions that these students could do could be enclosed in what's called a student object. So these properties, such as the color of their hair or the length of the hair or whether they can walk or run or eat, these are all not defined on a per object basis. If you had to do that, then you would have to say, I'm going to create a thing here called Joe, and Joe can eat, and Joe can walk, and Joe can run. And then I'm going to create a different thing entirely here called Anna, and Anna can eat, and Anna can walk, and she can run. And then you would have to do that for every student that you ever have. And so that would be a lot of typing. So obviously we don't want to do that. We don't want to be defining each student as their own thing. So what we want to do instead is say all students have a color of hair, and they all have a mark, they all have a degree that they're doing. And now we can say, and Rolf is a student, so therefore he must have these properties. And we can simply say, so Rolf's hair color is blonde and the degree he's doing is computer science. And Anna, her hair color is brown and the degree she's doing is applied computing, for example. And now all of these students are the same sort of thing, the same type of thing, but they all have their own individual values for the properties, even though we know they all have the same properties. So enough with my rant here or monologue. Let's go and see if we can create an object. So the way we're going to approach this is we're going to say all the things that we use in our application for now are going to be models. And these models are, as you would expect, a thing that models something from the real life. So for example, a post in our blog is something from real life. It could be a piece of paper that has a title and it has some sort of content and it has a date that it was written. So we're going to create a Python package called models, and then we're going to right click that and create a new Python file called post. And now we're going to define this part of the program that specifies that posts as a general type of thing have a content and have an author and have a title. So in order to do that, we use what's called a class. So this type of thing that has a content and an author and a title, this type of thing is a class of thing. So we can classify these things that have these shared properties as the same class, as the same thing. So these are all going to be posts. So we actually don't need that. This class of type post is in fact an object that has a number of properties and a number of things that it can do. So that's why we put the object here between the brackets. We say this post comes from an object. So we can treat it as an object, and we're also going to specify a certain number of properties that it also has, as well as being an object. So we then specify what properties each post will have. And we do that in the init method. The init method stands for initialize and is the method that gets called when you say, I'm going to create a new thing that is a post. And this new thing that is a post is going to have the following content and the following title, for example. So here we say self, which is this thing that you are creating, dot title equals, this is my title. Sorry about that. And then self.content equals, this is some content. Self.author is Jose, which is me. Okay. So now let's go back to our app and remove all this. And instead say we're going to create our first post. So we're going to say post equals post. And we're going to have to import this post from our models.post file. So models.post file that we've got up here is the container of our class that we are importing, which is the post with a capital P. And then we say our variable called post, remember you can call this whatever you want, is an instance of this class. Basically we have post, we can have post2 equals post. So now these two are, just as in the student example, they are different posts. Think of it different pieces of paper with different titles, different contents, different authors. However, when we print post dot content and then we print post2 dot content, sorry about that, we will see if we run this that they both have the exact same content. Now this is nothing to be surprised at, because if we go to our post file we can see that we've defined here that the content of the object that we are creating is this is some content. So if we go to our app, here we're creating one post and the content for it is this is some content, and we're putting this object that has that content inside our variable, and then we're creating another post that also has this is some content as its content, and we're putting that post inside the variable post2. So although they are different posts, they both have the same content. If we say post2.content equals some different content, and we run this again, we now see that post.content has this is some content, which is the default, the one we defined inside the init method, and post2 has some different content in it, which is what we changed up here. So these two are different things of the same type, of the same class. And this is the basis for object-oriented programming. So it sounds, I hope, simple enough. And I know it may be a bit confusing in the beginning when you're thinking, this is a computer, man. there are no objects, there are no classes, there are no things. It only knows ones and zeros. So what are you talking about? And of course, the computer doesn't know that these things are objects, and it doesn't know these things are posts. All it knows is there are a bunch of ones and zeros somewhere inside the computer. And through the years of programming, we've come to develop Python as a language in which you can do this. You can create this sort of abstraction that allows us to understand what's going on in a lot easier way. So for us, it makes sense to think of this as things that are in the real world, 2 pieces of paper with some properties in it. That makes sense for us as people. It doesn't make sense for the computer at all, of course. But the key here is to make us understand what is going on so that we can make programs, we can make software quickly and easily, even if that added complexity of having these objects and having to treat them as such in the computer makes the computer go slower. It makes us go faster, and that is the whole point of it. So think of it as things in real life, because that is the point of object-oriented programming. So obviously we could do this. We could create some default content. So whenever you create a new post, then the title is, this is my title, the content is, this is some content, and the author is Jose. You could do this. However, that would be slightly limiting, because then when you create a post and you want to change the content, you have to add another line that changes the content of it. So instead, what we can do is say, after the self, put a comma and say title, content, and author, and pass these 3 as parameters. Like so. So then what we'll do is say self.title, which is the object we're creating. Title is the title that we pass the init method. Self.content is the content we pass the init method. Self.author is the author we pass the init method. And then here we have to say post1 title, post1 content, post1 author. And I'm going to copy this and change it to post2. And then we no longer need that. And now if we print this out, we see that post1 content and post2 content get printed out, because that's what we passed it in the init method. So now the post gets initialized with this title, this content, and this author. And this other post gets initialized with this title, this content, this author. So that simplifies the creation process slightly. Now we can create a new object of type post already initialized with some certain properties that we know beforehand. So for example, when our user of our app comes to write a new post, we will ask them for a title and we will ask them for some content, and then we'll create a new object with that title and that content. So this is what object-oriented programming is, and I understand this video was a bit dense. There's a lot of me talking and not much doing, but hopefully helped you understand, and it will help you throughout the next sections to understand really what's going on. And remember, if you want to research this a bit more, I encourage you to do that and to try to understand and think of the things around you as objects that have properties and that have some actions they can do. So until the next video, where we're going to be implementing this post a bit more in detail and see at the things it contains and the things it can do. So yeah, hopefully that was alright for you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.